In this video, we will look at surveys. Have you already participated in a survey? The answer is probably yes. For example, you may have already seen the set of smileys just in a shop or a website and asked to give your opinion about the experience. Or you may have been invited to fill out an evaluation form for a course you took in the university. In both cases, you participated in a survey. So, a first definition of a survey can be an investigation about the characteristics of a given population by means of collecting data from a sample of that population. In other words, instead of collecting information from the entire population, as was the case of the census, we are going to interview a part of this population called the sample. Collecting information from a smaller group of individuals will allow us to collect more detailed information on certain aspects. For example, the census provides us information on the number of children residing in a household or within a family. In a survey, we can also ask questions whether this number corresponds to the ideal family size of the parents. There are multiple types of surveys, and in the next few slides, we will cover some of the main distinctions that will help you understand the type of survey you are dealing with. A survey provides information on a given population, so understanding the population that is the reference is very important. When the study population is the entire population, regardless of age, sex, activity, citizenship, we talk about general population surveys. In other times, the topic of interest concerns a specific population, so it may be useful to delimit our reference population. For example, for a long time, family and fertility surveys were only asked to women of reproductive ages. However, now they cover a broader group in terms of both age and sex. For the study of school to work transitions, we often limit the study population to persons who receive a degree or exit the school system without a given year. Also, general population surveys most often focus on persons residing in ordinary households. Thus, if we want to understand the experience of persons living in institutional accommodations, such as hospitals, retirement homes, or prisons, specific statistical operations need to be carried out. A second distinction concerns the sampling method. There are many types of sampling methods, but generally we distinguish between probability and non-probability sampling. In the first case, the reference population is known, and there's a list of all the members of this population. For example, a database with all the addresses of dwellings, or the population register with all the individuals residing in a certain country. Individuals or addresses are chosen randomly from this sampling frame. If the database contains additional characteristics, we can set additional criteria. For example, we only want to interview households with the children under the age of 3, or at least one member who was born abroad. In non-probability, we apply non-probability sampling methods when we do not have a complete list of our reference population, and we will use other techniques. Convenience sampling refers to situations when we interview all the persons available. For example, if we're interested in the opinion of persons regarding public transportation, we may go and interview persons leaving or entering the metro. Quota sampling is similar, but the sample size and characteristics are determined beforehand so that they resemble the reference population in terms of basic demographics such as age, sex, educational level. In the snowball method, first contact is made with a person who fits our criteria, and later we ask for references for other persons in the same situation. This method is particularly helpful with hard-to-find populations such as migrants. Although non-probability methods are easier to implement, they also raise specific issues. In other words, whether the approach chosen to reach the respondents actually allows to reach our ideal reference population. Many surveys are carried out on a regular interval, whether it is monthly, annually, or every couple of years. This allows to follow over time changes in indicators, for example, attitudes towards immigration. However, in other cases, it may be necessary to conduct a one-time survey. For example, after the 2004 tsunami, the study of the Tsunami Aftermath and Recovery STAR study was designed to provide evidence on the immediate and long-term consequences of this event in the region. In many cases, respondents are contacted and interviewed at one point of time. In this case, we referred to surveys as cross-sectional. Longitudinal surveys individuals over time, and the period of observation can go from several months or years to an entire lifetime. In a birth cohort, individuals are recruited when they're born and they're followed up as they grow up. This longer period of observation allows to better understand the mechanisms behind certain dynamics, such as children's school success. However, these types of surveys are also more difficult to carry out, as individuals may stop participating in the survey for different reasons. A last distinction when faced with a survey that can be useful to understand the survey is if this is surveys part of a larger research work, which opens up opportunities in terms of research, but may also be helpful to understand the methodology of the survey you're working on. For example, why certain choices made, why certain changes were made. So, for example, some surveys started as being separate projects carried out at a national level, and their methodology and content were later homogenized with other surveys. This is the case of the labor force surveys that existed in various European countries since the 1950s and 1960s, and which were homogenized, and now it is an EU-wide statistical operation. Other surveys, such as the demographic and health surveys, have taken part in over 90 countries, and here they were all conceived to have the same methodologies in the countries from the start.